Moscow, for an armchair warrior like U.S. President Donald Trump, who received 5 deferments from serving in Vietnam, assassinations must look like a foreign policy silver bullet. You take out your enemy's leadership with a drone strike or a rifle shot and, presto, your problems are solved. In fact, there is no historical basis for believing that assassinations solve anything. But there are plenty of precedents that they make things far, far worse. The Soleimani assassination in U.S. Strategic Incoherence. Mark Wilson, Getty Images. Richard N. Haas. Following its targeted killing of Iran's second most powerful leader, the U.S. could well find itself with no alternative but to devote more military resources to the Middle East, a path that could lead to additional Iranian provocations. And that shift would occur at a time of growing challenges to U.S. interests elsewhere in the world. 39. Add to bookmarks. What does Soleimani's death change? Pool, press office of Iranian Supreme Leader, Anadolu Agency, Getty Images. Shlomo Ben-Ami. The targeted killing by the United States of one of Iran's top military leaders represents a significant symbolic defeat for the Iranian regime, but it does not augur all-out war. After all, Iran and the U.S. have already been at war for decades, and neither side has an interest in an uncontrolled military escalation now. 7. Add to bookmarks. PS. Commentators' predictions for 2020. PS. On point. Malta Muller, Getty Images. PS. Editors asked commentators to anticipate the events and trends to watch in major countries in the world. 4. Add to bookmarks. Assassinations are, in almost every case, desperate gambles, usually carried out not by statesmen but by committed ideologues. This has been clear at least since the golden age of the assassin, Europe and America in the late 19th century and early 20th century. During these decades, anarchists murdered 2 U.S. presidents, James A. Garfield and William McKinley, a Russian Tsar, Alexander II, a Habsburg Empress, Elizabeth, wife of Franz Joseph I, an Italian king, Umberto I, a French president, Sadi Carnot, and 2 Spanish premiers, Antonio Cánovas del Castillo and José Canalejas y Méndez. The 2 great heroes of this movement of anarcho-assassins, Mikhail Bakunin and Prince Petr Kropotkin, were Russians, which is not surprising. After all, in the words of an anonymous Russian diplomat of the time, quoted by Georg Herbert Zumünster, 19th-century Russia could be described as absolutism tempered by assassination. Bakunin and Kropotkin both embraced assassination, which they called the propaganda of the deed, or, as the Harvard cultural historian Maya Jasanoff more correctly called it in her luminous study The Dawn Watch, Joseph Conrad in A Global World, Propaganda by Dynamite. Jasanoff was commenting on Conrad's The Secret Agent, the Polish-English novelist's darkly cynical story in which a purveyor of pornography, not some political fanatic, plots a terrorist atrocity. Such tactics, Conrad seems to suggest, are the tools of demented misfits, hollowed-out malcontents, and the morally corrupt, not government leaders. And, in the end, the violent anarchy of Bakunin and Kropotkin yielded the Soviet Union, which in the Stalin era was just about the most totalitarian state the world has ever known. Though China's Mao Zedong would certainly challenge that title, and with the advent of big data, facial recognition technology and artificial intelligence may enable its current president Xi Jinping to keep it. And if Tsarist Russia was a form of absolutism tempered by assassination, Japan in the 1920s and 1930s perfected a form of politics in which murder became the military's chosen means of influencing government policy. Determined to eliminate civilian opposition to Japan's invasion and takeover of China, extreme nationalist elements of Japan's army and navy engaged in a series of assassinations to achieve their policy goals. Prime Minister Inukai Tsuyoshi, who negotiated the London Naval Treaty, which, in the eyes of the nationalists, gave Japan a status inferior to that of the United States and the United Kingdom, was murdered in 1932. Originally, the officers had also planned to kill Charlie Chaplin, whom Inukai had hosted at a reception earlier in the day. The light sentences handed out to the assassins only encouraged more, and greater, political bloodshed. Although the plotters of the February 26 incident failed to assassinate Prime Minister Keisuke Okada or to take Emperor Hirohito hostage, they did succeed in killing Finance Minister Takahashi Korikyo, sometimes called Japan's Keynes, and Admiral Saito Mikoto, one of Hirohito's closest military advisors. Another, Admiral Kantaro Suzuki, was wounded. In a grim sense, these assassinations succeeded because Japan's militarists so intimidated the government and palace that their policies, in China and elsewhere, could no longer be challenged. The road to war, and Japan's ultimate ruin, lay open. Subscribe now, subscribe today and get unlimited access to On Point, The Big Picture, the PS archive of more than 14,000 commentaries, and our annual magazine, for less than $2 a week. Subscribe. Through some state-sponsored assassinations, and attempted assassinations, contain an element of personal vengeance. Stalin loathed Leon Trotsky, and was undoubtedly delighted when the Spanish communist and Soviet NKVD agent Ramon Mercader buried an ice pick in his one-time rival's head. And Russian President Vladimir Putin has been accused of allegedly ordering the killing of former KGB operative Alexander Litvinenko by radioactive polonium in 2006 and the poisoning of Sergei Skripal, along with his daughter, who luckily survived their exposure to the Novichok nerve agent in 2018. Supposedly, he took their defection to London as a personal affront. But the world's democracies should not feel very self-righteous where assassination is concerned. It is easy to imagine that some wounded Amir Papri was behind U.S. leaders' persistent efforts to assassinate Cuba's Fidel Castro, using everything from poison to exploding cigars. And it was a British attempt to assassinate Napoleon that led to a renewal of warfare in Europe after peace had been concluded with the Treaty of Amiens. Two political scientists, Northwestern's Benjamin Jones and MIT's Benjamin Olkin, have actually tried to quantify how misguided assassinations are as a matter of policy. They examined 298 assassination plots dating back to 1875 and discovered that success was no sure thing. Indeed, only 59 of the attempts ended with the target dead. More to the point, Jones and Olkin's research bears directly on the assassination of Qasem Soleimani. They found that such targeted killings by governments do little either to deter war or to minimize it. So, as usual with Trump, the world may just have witnessed an empty, and potentially a very costly in the long run, gesture. Let's block ads. Why?